Hi everyone. I hope you're doing well and your online classes are going great. This week, as you can see from your module overview, we are focusing a lot on sources. And for this, you have to read chapter number 15 of your textbook. Um, so what I'm going to do in this short video to help you understand the activities for this week and to help you build up those activities so that you are able to perform really well in your Unit 1 assignment. I have your textbook in front of you and I'm going to go over a few pertinent points to simplify things for you. I'm sure that you will find them easy and hopefully very helpful as well. Okay, so the first thing, what are sources? When we talk about sources, sources mean where are we getting our information from? Now, as your textbook mentions, there are common fallacies associated with sources. For example, people believe facts cannot lie. Then people believe that numbers are always right because those things are unemotional, unmediated by human fallibility, and so they are perfectly fine. They are the true things. But the truth is that facts can be manipulated. Nothing that you get from any source can be completely unbiased and completely without human mediation because all our knowledge that we construct is socially created, right? So, how do we know that a source that we are going to quote in a paper is an authentic source? Well, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. Where is the source located? How is the source being funded? What is the context of the production of a particular thing? Now, there are many studies that you, I'm sure, would have come across which talk about percentages. This percentage of people believe this, or this percentage of people believe that. But the thing is that all those studies are just sometimes representative, sometimes they're studies based on false premises. So the reason is that you cannot carry out a public 100% universal referendum to get public's opinion. So most of the studies which talk about opinions of people or about marketing techniques are based on sample populations. Now, faults and problems can occur when that sample is not representative enough for the group that it is representing, right? So, for example, let's say I look at your classroom and I say, well, about based on, let's say, I talk to 3 or 4 students and I say, well, based on my discussion with these 3 students, I think my 1320 course wants a particular thing. Now, I did not ask other people. They might have come from different backgrounds. They might have had completely different opinions from those 4 or 5 groups. So those 4 or 5 people in the classroom are and can be I can say they might not be very representative. So how do I make a claim like that and make sure that the sample that I get is appropriate and is actually accurate? I will have to see and select people who are representative of the groups. For example, let's say I can make surveys to see if people agree on certain things or not. I can ask questions. So basically my idea is that to make sure that your sources are authentic, you have to be very cognizant of the fact that these things can be falsified. So you as a student, what you are going to do is realize that a lot of sources like which quote facts are sometimes faulty. So see what is the institute that is carrying out a research, that if you're selecting a research, where is that research being conducted? How old is that research? Because sometimes, specifically if it deals with facts and medical research, researches more than a few years back can sometimes turn out to be not relevant anymore, right? So keep all of these things in mind. Think about the context of the production of the research, who funded the research, what were the interested parties' interests, was this research actually representative and authentic, or were there negative results and things were just simply skipped out. So please keep that in mind. Those things are very essential. Now let's take a quick look at your textbook. Chapter 15, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating sources. Now, I've given you a little bit of a brief overview of what the chapter talks about in terms of selecting a source. Now, there are types of sources that we are going to discuss. Now, the first type of sources that I'm sure you're aware of are textbooks, right? Textbooks, books, any kind of published material. Now, books, as your textbook mentions, takes a lot of time to prepare, and though they are excellent sources of information, they might not be very up to date or latest unless they have been published recently. So what people, to make sure that they don't select a source which is problematic, they go to periodicals, scholarly periodicals, magazines that are published specifically in their field. Like there are magazines based on business research, magazines in humanities, and many others. So what happens with this is that because they are published either twice a year or quarterly, their work is very up to date and they keep up with the trends. That is actually one of the very best resources you can find. Then of course there are news reports, newspapers. Keep in mind, yes, use newspapers, they're good, but don't use opinion pieces simply. See where the opinion is coming from. Also, see and try and analyze the report or source you are using in your research to explain this seems to be a factual idea, or we can say this seems to be mediated to you without any overt bias, but this is not. So explain to yourself, if a newspaper is propagating a particular side of the political spectrum, they probably have an interest in doing that, right? So understanding, or I would say unmasking this facade of things being completely factual anywhere, that's as far as I think, it's a complete fallacy, because no information you get from anywhere is going to be completely objective. But you can still see that there are levels of objectivity that is retained in many cases, and in some other cases you can look for that objectivity yourself. Look at a paper, see what your opinion is, explain to yourself why you feel a particular way about a certain thing you're reading, and try to understand various viewpoints about it. So my first suggestion to you would be, look for the context of the research, content and context both, of the research that you are selecting for your research proposal. So how do you do it? You see where it is published by who, funded by who. Do you agree with their opinion? If so, why? Do you think it is a good fit for your research? If so, why? Keep in mind, all of these things are important because they will help you in informing your own research. All right. So we have talked about journals, we have talked about books, journals, newspapers. All of these things are good sources of information depending on the kind of research you're doing. Keep one thing in mind though. If you are selecting a particular article from the internet, online resources, you have to make sure that the website is either updated regularly and is a government sponsored website. In that case it will say .gov at the end, right? Or it is from an educational institution, but it needs to be a verifiable source. You cannot quote from Wikipedia, you cannot quote from answers.com. Those websites can be edited, can be changed, and that is not a good thing for your research itself. I would highly recommend reading this whole chapter really thoroughly. It does an excellent job of explaining how do we summarize arguments and how do we synthesize arguments. Lastly, let's just quickly discuss synthesis. Let's say you have decided on your topic, you have decided on what you are going to, what sources you're going to use, and then lastly you now want to combine them together to form a coherent argument of your own. Remember, you are not parroting their argument, the sources that you find, okay? What you're doing is you are looking at them for your own, to support your own argumentative stance. Think about the example that is given in your textbook of that essay about weight and how fat people are viewed by our media and our population. Look at the way the author, in a remarkably masterful way, combines different sources. So she talks about a particular source, and then she explains how it is relevant to her. So basically what she does, she summarizes it, she explains, links it to her own argument, and then moves forward. All right. So there is not an overt I would say, rendition of or just a gibberish just bound together. No, it is an argument, and you're simply using the sources to explain, elaborate on the context, and basically talk about and help you define your viewpoint. Now, keep in mind, please, whenever you're quoting, don't plagiarize. Don't take somebody else's information, somebody else's work, and try and present it as your own. That is unethical, and your university takes a very, very serious view of such a thing. So there are accidental ways in which you can plagiarize, and then there are non-accidental ways. Non-accidental, I don't need to explain to you. Accidental is when you have been reading something and you kind of like summarize it, write the argument a little bit in your own words, but you don't give credit to the author. So please make sure that doesn't happen. Be very careful, all right? And this week's assignments, they are hopefully going to be very helpful for you in preparing for your Unit 1 assignment. So let's go over it. The first thing is your activity where you are searching for sources and summarizing content. And I think it's a good activity because it's not just writing, it's you have to draw, you have to basically use your mind and think about the stuff you want to discuss and put it into a very specific terms in diagrammatic form. And believe me, that is not very easy or simple to do, because when we have ideas, they usually are sprawling all over our brains. So when we have to jot them down in a few words in very clear terms, our ideas themselves become clearer. So please go ahead, do that. And then there is one assignment that I wanted to discuss with you, which is the peer review, which starts this week and goes on to the next week. All right, this means you have until next week to basically give feedback to your peers. I have divided you guys into groups, which means that you have to see the goals, see all the details for the assignment, but you have to provide drafts of your research proposal, and your classmates are going to give you feedback on that, which is really going to be helpful because you'll be getting not just my perspective, let's say, but a lot of other people's perspective. So you will see, oh, I was writing this, and this is how it's coming across to my class fellows. So hopefully that is going to be helpful for you. Go over this week's course. Tell me if you find anything that is that I need to elaborate on, and hopefully you enjoyed this week's essays too about college drinking, and then the analysis of it. And hopefully you will do great in the first unit assignment. Thank you.